Next, we travel to the Glacial Ridge Trail. Here, just south of Sundberg, Norwegian settlers built a log church in 1868. Local historian Marlon Henjum tells the story.
The Norway Lake area was kind of the edge of the frontier in the late 1850s, and there was really nothing west of here. But settlers came into this area, and the area grew in population and all kinds of things. And one of the first things they started to think about was establishing a church. And so they did that, and then back in about 1997, 98, a gentleman by the name of Joel News got the idea that we should memorialize the fact that these early pioneers established a church here. And so he had the idea of rebuilding a replica of the original log church. And his idea developed into actually a formation of the Norway Lake Lutheran Historical Association. And the first thing the organization did was to build a replica of that original log church on the same site. Because we knew it was there because gravestones had been turned up during a road construction project in the late 1950s, early 1960s. And so a bunch of hard-working guys got together and cut down logs from a local woods and built a replica of that log church. And we celebrated our 10th anniversary here in 2009.
So the location of the log church today is real close to its original location?
As far as we know, it's very, very close to where it originally stood. And before the people even built a church, they had needs for burial grounds because people died and there was no church to do it. So one of the sites was where the East Norway Lake Church stands today. There were people that were buried there before there was any church. And they would bury the body and wait until the circuit preacher came through, and then they'd hold a service, a more formal funeral service for that person once he was here. But people were buried here. My great-great-grandmother was very likely buried here in 1869. And unfortunately, the cemetery was overgrown and farmed and so forth, and eventually it just disappeared until that road construction project that I mentioned. And those few tombstones that you see over there, grave markers, were turned up by the road construction crew, which is when we realized that this was a site of something pretty significant. So a group of men in the area who are no longer with us established that area as a memorial site back several years ago, but then that was really where it stood until the Norway Lake Lutheran Historical Association formed and built this site that's here today.
Visitors to the log church will find not one, but 3 log structures.
Shortly after the log church was built, a local family told us that they had a log building which they didn't know what to do with, and they were willing to donate it to us. So the association took on the project of moving that log building, which at the time had been used as a granary, but it may very well have been a log cabin house at one time as well. And that was moved intact from the Peterson farm about 3-4 miles away, something like that, and it is currently being used as our interpretive center. And the third project involved the rebuilding of a log cabin home a short distance from here, about a quarter of a mile away, that was owned by the Ole Knudsen family, and it was originally a 2-story farm dwelling, typical of those in Minnesota. And they started to tear the building down, and when they got to the center of the building, they found the original log cabin. So that's pretty much been restored as it was at the time the early pioneer lived in the house.
Ed Huseby worked on all 3 building projects: the replica church, the Granary Interpretive Center, and the restoration of the Knudsen cabin.
When we decided that we were going to build something to honor the heritage of that original church, we thought that it would be appropriate to do something in a similar manner, in that we would go out and cut logs from the local woods that surround the farm places and the like. And so we did that in the fall of 1997. Half of the logs came from one farm, and it was a tremendously generous gift to us. It was a farm where, when it was settled, the settlers, that family, would not let anybody cut their oak trees. And as a result, there was a large number of tall, straight oak trees in that small area that we cut. And they let us go in there and cut as many as we needed. We needed 60 logs to build that building, and 30 of them came from that location. And they were the longest and the straightest. It's very difficult. I said that the original log church was 26 by 30. Ours is 20 by 28, smaller. But they had a better choice of long logs than we did. And it's very hard to get an oak tree to grow in a manner that's straight and for 30 feet. Mm-hmm. We got some that were 28. That was. So not only did we cut the logs from this local area here, but we also did it with volunteer labor. And so the two are parallel, and I think we feel good about that. In fact, when I think about that phrase, feeling good about something, I think that happened over and over again as we were constructing that building. We started with flat ground, a cornfield actually, and as we saw it develop and rise up, we would stand back periodically and look and say, "This is good. This is something about which we can feel proud." These are two different types of axes. This is called a chipping axe, and this is called the broad axe, and it's fairly evident why those two are called that. This has a very narrow head to it, and it's used to make wood chips, of course, on each side of a log. They would stand on top of the log and chop into the log on each side. And the small one was used to get chips in to the log at a certain distance, and they were good at doing that at a certain distance. Once they had done that for the length of the log, then they came with this axe, and it's called a broad axe. And that has a much wider head to it, and they would then cut all the chips off, and you would end up with flat sides on both sides of the log. If you look closely on this building, that was done on the outside, not on the inside, but it was done on the outside. And there still are some indentations from the chipping axe that you can see.
Now, after building the log church and then looking at, did you notice any differences between the work you were doing and the handwork
that the original pioneers did?
The original pioneers.
Oh yeah, it was very humbling, especially corners. Corners are extremely important, and the design is really ingenious, but it requires a great deal of skill in working with the wood to get one log to match the exact surface of the previous log. And we did that on our replica, but we did not get the tight fit for the corners that you will see on this building. Now, the third building that we worked on was a restoration of the Ole Knudsen cabin. And there we made darn sure that we spent the time that we needed to replicate we had a number of logs there where we simply put them back together. But there were other logs where we had to replace them. And when we had to replace them, then we had to do the corner. We had to cut that corner so it would match the previous log. And we took great care to make sure that we did it well in that case. But they did it. Ole Knudsen probably built that in a summer. And all of his corners were just about perfect. You can't slip a playing card in between the two logs. He matched them that closely. And he did all of those in a summer. That's why I say when you have greater and greater appreciation for the ability, the intellect, and just the sheer tenacity that they had. There's all kinds of evidence where they figured things out on their own and did it very, very well. It lasted like 100 years. And today we don't really take that kind of care, perhaps.
We thank Norway Lake Lutheran Historical Association for their hard work to provide us with this glimpse into Minnesota's past. If you enjoy history, I encourage you to visit the Old Log Church just outside Sunburg on the Glacial Ridge Trail. For Lakes Country Living, this is Steve Henning. Thanks for watching.